Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Softball Canada Speaker Series presented by Rawlings Canada. Today's webinar is all about defense with our guest speakers, Victoria Hayward from our women's national team and Chris Jones, men's national team alumni and currently an assistant coach with the women's national team. Although the softball season is currently suspended due to the COVID-19 situation, we're happy to have this opportunity to engage with everyone listening at home, and we hope you will enjoy listening to our great speakers. Bonjour à tous et bienvenue à la série de webinaires de Softball Canada présentée par Rawlings Canada. Le webinaire d'aujourd'hui est tout sur la défensive avec nos invités spéciaux Victoria Hayward de l'équipe nationale féminine et Chris Jones, un ancien de l'équipe nationale masculine et présentement un entraîneur adjoint de l'équipe nationale féminine. Quoique la saison de softball est présentement suspendue en raison de la situation COVID-19, on est heureux d'avoir la chance de nous engager avec vous et on espère que vous aimerez écouter à nos excellents invités. Before we get started, we want to thank everyone for joining us and for following the social distancing measures as directed by the Government of Canada and your local health authorities. Softball Canada is monitoring the situation closely and is posting regular updates on its website. Please continue to follow the government's COVID-19 prevention measures to help flatten the curve, and we will be back on the field as soon as it is safe to do so. Avant de commencer, on veut vous remercier d'être avec nous et de suivre les mesures de distanciation sociale telles qu'identifiées par le gouvernement du Canada et vos autorités locales de soins de la santé. Softball Canada surveille la situation de près et publie des mises à jour régulières sur son site web. Veuillez continuer à suivre les mesures de prévention du gouvernement du Canada et pour aider à rétrécir la courbe, et on sera de retour sur le terrain dès que ce sera possible d'y retourner en sécurité. This webinar series is presented by our proud partners at Rawlings Canada. Rawlings is the exclusive equipment supplier of Softball Canada's national teams. Cette série de webinaires est présentée par nos fiers partenaires à Rawlings Canada. Rawlings est le fournisseur d'équipements officiel des équipes nationales de Softball Canada. My name is Gilles Leblanc. I'm the manager of marketing and communications at Softball Canada, and I'll be your host for this webinar. Allow me to introduce our first guest, Victoria Hayward, who was the youngest player to join the women's national team as a 16-year-old in 2009. Victoria has played in each of the last 5 WBSC Women's World Championships, winning 3 bronze medals, and has also won a pair of silver medals at the Pan American Games. She is currently training to compete in the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games that are scheduled to take place in 2021. Welcome, Victoria.
Hi, Joel. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. I'm also happy to welcome Chris Jones, an 11-year member of our men's national team program who played in 3 WBSC World Championships, winning a pair of silver medals and won the gold medal at 2 Pan American Games. He joined the women's national team coaching staff as an assistant coach in 2018 and is also currently the head coach of Team Ontario for the 2021 Canada Summer Games. Thank you for joining us today, Chris.
Hey, Gilles. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, nice having you on for today. So I'll just start off with a couple of intro questions. I'll start with you, Victoria. So before we get started, can you talk a bit about yourself and your journey with the women's national team?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's the perfect word to describe it, really, is journey. It's been going on 13 years, so it started when I was 16. And as you mentioned, just the youngest player ever in 2009, when it was a very transitional time, with the 2008 Olympics just ending and a lot of retirements from a lot of the most historic Canadian players to play for our program. And so just a great opportunity for someone that was young and eager like me to step in and get really great experience at a young age. I was actually playing on both the junior and senior teams for a number of those years while I was eligible for both. So I was representing Canada all the time, all over the world, and it was awesome. Like you said, 5 World Championships, 2 Pan Am Games. Unfortunately, I tore my ACL in 2015 when our team went on to win the historic gold medal. But that was a super critical time for figuring out who I wanted to be as a player. just after college. I'd been on this team in high school, throughout college, and then after college, and it was really transitional time in deciding the type of career I wanted to have. And so I've really just grown up on this team. I'm now a captain and super proud of that, and just helping lead our team through not only these tough times right now, but also just this Olympic experience, and so grateful for everything that I've experienced and learned from wearing the maple leaf. So forever grateful for that.
Yeah, so you did mention there that you started the women's national team in 2009. You got the opportunity to play alongside Caitlin Lever and Melanie Matthews in those early years, both Olympians, two of the best outfielders that we've ever had. Is there anything that you learned from kind of playing with them at that young age?
Definitely. And they both were similar players. They were both left-handed hitters, outfielders. We all laughed. We were all blonde. We had a lot in common. But I think from them, I learned a lot about leadership, and then just learned that there wasn't one way that outfield had to be played. Caitlin was an amazing center fielder, Caitlin Lever. She taught me about aggressiveness, and just she always knew where the ball needed to go and who should be where. And she had a great sense of the game, and I learned a lot from that. And then just when to be aggressive. She's made some of the best diving catches I've ever seen in my life, and had no fear. So I think that was something I learned from Caitlin and try to embody. In terms of Mel was always very composed and was like the best corner infielder you could imagine. She was a little bit more calculated, which as a corner outfielder, you have to be a little bit more calculated in terms of when you are able to take risks. But she was super consistent, and just kind of figuring out for me where my identity was going to be. Was I going to be really aggressive, or was I going to be more calculated, and just kind of figuring out who I was. And I had two great role models.
Great. So be honest, in 2008 at the Olympics, you were obviously watching on TV. You were 15 years old. Were you cheering for USA or Canada? I know you were born in Canada, but raised in the US.
Yeah, no, I did have the opportunity to watch the 2008 USA team on their tour as they were in near where I was living. But no, I have always and will always root for Canada in any sort of situation. No doubts about that.
And how excited are you about preparing for the Olympics to represent Canada in 2021?
I'm incredibly honored and grateful and excited. I think our team is in a great position, and we have a great group of people, staff included, and I've just never been with a group of people as committed to a mission, and I'm super excited to see where we can take this thing.
Great, thanks, Vic. So Chris, I'll move over to you now. So you're a former men's national team athlete, and you're now an assistant coach with the women's national team. Can you give us a bit more detail about your softball journey?
Yeah, growing up in Oshawa, Ontario, back in the 70s, and I'm dating myself, but it was a real hotbed for softball. A lot of great teams for men's softball. So as a kid, pretty much played hockey in the winter and softball in the summer. So I just stuck to that. As I got older, certainly got some attention, and then tied into some really good club teams all over Ontario, whether it was in Owen Sound or Toronto. That sort of got me in with the national program back in 1994, and was lucky enough to stay with it for 11 years, pretty much travel the world, playing a sport that I loved. Got to play all across the US, all across Canada, see some places, especially all over the world, that without softball, I never ever would have had that opportunity. Getting away from the game, retired in 2006 from playing, and pretty much wasn't sure if I'd ever get back into it. And then getting this opportunity to get back involved at the highest level with the women's game, I just feel blessed to be a part of this.
Right. So the Toronto Gators were widely recognized as one of the top club teams in the 1990s, and you were part of that team. What was it like to play on such a talented team and with high expectations for every year?
It was pretty exciting going to the ballpark. For instance, you might play in a small town in Ontario. There'd be 500 people there, pretty much all to come watch Darren and Zach pitch. But there'd be 30 people cheering for us, 30 cheering against us, and probably about 400 hoping we would lose. So we were big bad Toronto in playing in Ontario or in Canada. But that team was special. There was some incredible ball players. Our owner, Jack Fireman, was a very colorful individual, treated us really well. He sent us all over the country to play, and whenever you go into every single game expecting to win, it was always a good feeling. And that team, I mean, in 4 years of existence, from 93 to 96, they won 2 world championships, 3 national championships, and the 2 they lost once in the worlds, they came second and third. So it was an amazing experience being on that team.
And that team was inducted into the Softball Canada Hall of Fame a couple of years ago, so that was another special touch for that team. You personally, you played in 3 world championships and 2 Pan Am games. Who are some of the top fielders in that era, and what made them so special?
Yeah, back when I was with the national program, the world championships were every 4 years. So, you know, I was fortunate to have an opportunity to get to 3 of them. Probably from competitors, there's so many great players that we would play against. Infielders, the one team that always impressed me, we would always beat them, but it was watching Cuba play. Defensively, they were very, very special players, and just to watch them always impressed me. For me too, I had the fortune to play beside Adam Smith, who is my second baseman, and he and I played up the middle together pretty much with club team and national team for almost 10 years. So I was very fortunate to get to play beside someone like that, and you know, he knew where I was going to be all the time, and I knew where he was going to be. So it certainly worked out very well.
Right. So just before we start into the topics that we have lined up here, if anybody listening has any questions throughout, please type them in the questions box. We're going to have a 15-minute question and answer period at the end. So we do have some things that we want to go over on defense with both Victoria and Chris. If anything pops into your mind, just type it in that questions box. So we'll start with the first topic, which will be the ready position. So this isn't taught, you know, it's obviously the number one thing that coaches go through with their players on defense. It's getting into that ready position and being able to move from side to side, back and forth. One of the most important parts of playing defense is that ready position and being able to move in any direction when contact is made. Can you explain what the ready position looks like, Chris?
Oh. Yeah, you made a good point, Gilles, about sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, you made a good point about okay. You made a really good point there about having to go at any position any time. You know, we as a defensive player, nobody's Kreskin, they can't see the future. So the big thing is as a ready position, big thing I like to have is I want the athletes to be athletic, be on the balls of their feet, and not to be too low. A lot of girls I work with at the younger ages, they want their glove down and they're leaning forward. It'd be great if they have to charge everything, but in ready position, the big thing I teach is a little right foot, left foot, and a little hop to get up on the balls of the feet at point of contact. So basically, at point of contact, you want to be able to go as quickly as possible in any direction.
And Victoria, is that a bit different for you out in the outfield?
No, it's similar. I like to think about just your glove should be, as the further away you get from the hitter, your glove is going to be further off the ground. So when Coach Jones is talking about people wanting to be, so middles are going to have their glove a little bit higher, and then as outfielders, we're going to have our hands kind of around our holsters, around our waist, to be able to, exactly what he's saying, be able to react to the ball, be on our toes. A lot of times we have to run, so we want to be able to have our glove in a good position to do that. But yeah, a lot of the ready position is similar.
Now, when you're in your ready position, where are you looking? So you're looking towards the batter, but are you kind of looking to the middle of the catcher's glove to try to identify that point of contact to be able to read that right off the bat?
Yeah, I try to have my focus be on the hitting zone, what I call it. So where the barrel will hit the ball. But I think it's also important just to be able to track the pitch in a little bit, because the pitch can tell you a lot about where the ball is going to go before the hitter actually hits the ball. So tracking the pitch, but really focusing on getting that first initial read right when the barrel is entering the zone and when the ball's first contacted.
And now, Chris, from an infielder's perspective, can you read a lot about where the batter is standing and their stance in the batter's box too? Like, do you see fielders kind of moving over from one side to the other, depending if they have an open or a closed stance?
Well, it depends on a lot of different variables, right? Where they are in the batting order, yeah, how their stance is to see. I mean, I've seen hitters at the the back corner of the box, and they can still drive it all field. So you really have to watch their swing first before just seeing whether they're closed or open to dictate on your defensive positioning.
And does it change too depending on the count? Like if there's a batter who's on, has 2 strikes, and you kind of assume that they're going to be protecting the plate, and do you maybe shade them, towards the opposite field, if they're going to just make a late contact swing? Is that something that you guys look for too, or have your infielders look for? Chris?
Yeah, so a good moment for that is, so if a hitter's ahead in the count, they're probably going to be a little more aggressive, so you might be a little bit deeper. Whereas when they're behind the count, they might not be as aggressive, so they're trying to put it in play. They might not be looking to drive the ball, which might bring you a little closer. The big thing with that too, rise ball, you might be a quarter step back. Drop ball, you could be quarter step in, change a quarter step, pull side. Those are all little things you never want to show early, because you don't want to show the other team what you're doing. And the other big thing with that too is communication. You want to let, if you're going to cheat middle as a shortstop, you want to let your third baseman and second baseman know that you're moving, so then they can cheat with you, right? So the big thing too on that defensive positioning is communicating with your other infielders. Okay,
so now we'll jump over a bit to glove presentation. So does that give players more confidence if the ball is hit their way, knowing where their glove is, pointed downwards? And does it help with the first jump? Can you talk about the glove presentation, Chris?
Yeah, this is something that I harp about constantly. Glove presentation really is something that you want to do on a ball that's hit crisply at you, and it's basically you're opening your wrist, your fingers are down towards the ground, and it allows you to only field the ball in one direction as an infielder. You never ever want to field the ball down. You always want to field it either in your glove or up. Too many people don't present their glove, so basically as the ball gets closer to them, they will put the glove towards the ball, or they will present the glove, and then at the last minute they'll flip it up and present it again. So basically what glove presentation does is it allows you to have the glove open, prepare to field in one direction. You want, and you're not presenting a glove on a backhand because you got to get to it. Same with the forehand. Glove presentation is basically used on crisp balls that are hit in your general direction.
Yeah. And Victoria, on your end, what about glove presentation in the outfield? Obviously you have a bit more time, but you want to keep your glove in front of you. And how do you present your glove out there?
Yeah, so I try to think about a camera being on the heel of my glove, and as I'm approaching the ball, making sure that it is presented, as Coach Jens is saying, where you have clear sight of that ball. I think one thing he did touch on that I think is so important is just the glove flipping. So for people who might not know that, it's when you're late to present your glove and you end up flipping it down. So you could be there, you flip it up and flip it down, and that is just a really hard habit to break, and it is super detrimental, and it comes up in really big moments in both the infield and the outfield. So just the importance of using your glove to run, and then when you're ready to field the ball, your glove has clear sight of the ball and is moving in the most efficient way possible.
Good. So we'll move on to our second topic for today. So we're going to talk about aggressiveness now. So Chris, you like to use the term controlled aggression with infielders. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, controlled aggression, another big thing I talk about. And no matter how hard a ball is hit, you have to still be aggressive. So you could have the hardest ball that you've ever seen hit at you. You still need to be aggressive the way you field it. You can never let a ball play you. So when I talk about controlled aggression, whether a ball, there's a lot of different variables. For instance, how fast is the runner? How quickly is the ball hit to you? What's the surface you're playing on? Is it hard? Is it fast? Is it slow? Is the batter left-handed? Is the batter right-handed? All these different variables will change the way your aggressiveness is. But you want to stay under control too. You don't want to be just going crazy on a ball. You still have to control that aggressiveness. So yeah, those are a whole bunch of different variables that will allow you to stay aggressive on the ground balls. never let them play you, and you're going to attack them, but all at different rates.
Yeah, so I guess the lesson there is you want to play the ball and you don't want the ball to play you. So you want to be going forward and trying to be as aggressive as possible and go get that ball before you wait for on a hop. And you might get a last minute bad hop and then you're not in position to field it. So Victoria, what about you? In terms of aggression in the outfield, I know line drives is obviously a tricky one to run into in the outfield. So can you talk about how aggressive you like to be in the outfield?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of how Jonesy's describing controlled aggression, we have that same mentality in terms of trying to attack a short hop or attack the hop when it's high. Just choosing to attack the ball at the time that you want to attack it. But a lot of outfield is risk management, as we are the last line of defense. So there are times where we're not actually able to be as aggressive as our gut may want to be, especially with balls down the line or depending on the game situation. So it's a lot of knowing the situation, the runners, the hitter, and what you're basically willing to risk in terms of that aggressiveness. And then there are also times when the game's on the line and you have no choice but to be as aggressive as possible. And if you don't succeed, it's called a do or die for a reason. And so I think there is a lot of kind of that risk management, trying to be aggressive while also being under control, and being like intentional with everything that you're doing.
And it makes it really important to have those, the fly balls, the line drives, the ground balls in the outfield pre-game, so you can read the field and see how balls are reacting off the ground as well. So Victoria, let's talk a bit about reading the ball off the bat. So as an outfielder, you touched on it a bit with the ready position, but what are you looking for when the ball comes right off the bat?
I'm looking for the speed and direction. So those are the two most important things when reading the ball. So we talk about outfielders, you always first step back. Well, actually, that's a great way for everyone in any position to get to the side of the ball, is taking a slight drop step, just so you have a little bit of an angle where we can read the speed and direction of the ball more efficiently. So the hardest ball to read is that one right at us, because we don't have the perception. So the minute we're able to kind of get to the side of the ball, whichever the ball is hit on, we're then able to gauge the speed and direction to then be able to make my moves. So just knowing your pitcher's tendencies and where pitchers tend to have balls be will kind of start to give you clues as to where they will go most of the time. But that first move of getting to the side of the ball and being able to read the speed and direction is what I'm looking for. And the earlier that you can pick it up, the better first step you're going to be, the more efficient you're going to be, and the faster you're going to be able to get to the ball.
And now when you're running in the outfield trying to track a ball, are you going to the ball or do the spot where you think the ball is going to end up?
Ideally you want to go to the spot. So I try to, as outfielders, our outfield is very fast, and I take pride in my speed, so I try to use my speed as efficiently as possible. So sprinting to where I think it's going to go, I like to keep my eye on the ball, just because of wind and other things, and just to be sure. So I know a lot of people would say take your eye off the ball and run to the spot. But yeah, I think getting to the spot and not drifting, because when you're moving in slow motion, bad things tend to happen. So really utilizing your speed and being as efficient as possible.
Good. And now, Chris, for infielders, obviously the balls come in a lot faster. It's a lot of reaction and instinct. So how do you work with developing infielders to, develop that quickness to get to the ball?
One of the biggest recommendations I have for infielders to do is during basically practice, like you would play a game during BP. And what that means is go to your position or go to an area or an angle from your position and read the pitch, watch the location of the pitch, see how it comes off the bat, and you could work with that too. Not only do you get to read that, but you get to work on your ready position and your point of contact to really speed up your first step. So that's the best way to do it, in my opinion. You can hit ground balls to people, but you don't get the same read as you would off of a BP situation. So I'm a big believer in getting those reps, reading the balls off the bat in your team's batting practice.
And would you recommend a lot of agility training too off season, you know, with ladders? And I know the women's national team does quite a bit of that pre-game, you know, morning of the game, just to work on that quickness, you know, in general for both infielders and outfielders. Is that something that you certainly encourage?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the quicker first step you can have, the better defensive player you're going to be. The more balls you're going to get to, for sure.
And similar to you, Victoria, you find those beneficial to you as an outfielder, those quick step drills?
Definitely, and just figuring out how to take them at different angles and just being athletic, because you don't always get the great first read that you want. So how quickly are you able to compensate and adjust to get on track? But just to reiterate Jonesy's point, outfield too, there's no drill that I could recommend more than live BP reads and live reads. The more that you can get those, the better you're going to be as an infielder and outfielder.
All right, so we'll move on now to our third topic, which is glove work. So how important is glove work for outfielders, and how do you work on improving that, Vic?
Yeah, I'm super passionate about glove work. I was lucky that I got to dabble in the infield as a first baseman a little bit, so I got to get a little bit of work on those things, and I saw what an incredible impact it had on my confidence approaching balls in the outfield. And I think it's something that's often overlooked. Like, we often separate infielders and outfielders when glove work and glove skills are important to every player: pitcher, catcher, infielder, outfielder. And so I think especially at a young age, the more we can keep them together, going through a lot of those things and just developing comfort with backhands, forehands, picking the right hops, understanding which hop, transfers, getting the ball out of your glove as quickly as possible. So many of those things are overlooked with outfield specifically. And I think that just your ability to handle the ball and be as efficient as possible is important no matter what position you're playing.
And when you're tracking a ball, how mindful are you about the positioning of your glove and where you need to throw the ball once you have it?
Yeah, so I try to do a lot of that pre-pitch, just know where the ball's going. What am I doing if it's hits me? What do I do if it's not hits me? Those are questions you're always asking. And I think as outfielders, you want to keep your glove as an extension of your arm while running for as long as possible. So whether that's obviously making sure to present your glove at the right time, but using your glove to help aid in your speed to get to the ball. But again, like with the camera thing, you always want to make sure that you're able to present it. And then I try to just make sure my footwork is most efficient for where I'm throwing the ball. So whether that's getting a little bit behind it to make sure that my steps are headed towards the direction of my throw, or even eliminating steps, picking it up and getting rid of it as quickly as possible. I think just knowing where I'm going with the ball and what my job is as an outfielder is to get it to the middles as quickly as possible. So when I know where they are and where they need to get the ball, the better it's going to be for me.
And for infielders, so glove work is important to field the ball, but you also have to have quickness to get in position to make a throw. Can you, Chris, explain in more detail what kind of drills do you use to improve that quickness?
Well, yeah, I mean, I like to do a lot of footwork is huge. Good footwork gets you to the position where you need to be to field that ground ball. So a lot of the stuff we really harp on the right, left. So basically, we want to get them into, we also call it a triangle, where you have your feet are parallel and your glove is basically, you want to field the ball not right in front of you, but almost where you're, as a right-handed throw, you want it on your left eye, out in front. So the big thing with your footwork is back to the quick feet. There's a few different drills that I do. There's a 4-pylon drill. These are hard to just to explain, but we like to do a lot of quick feet stuff to get them in those positions, to try to get the ball in front of you as quickly, basically as quick, get your body in front of that ball as quickly as possible. A couple of things with gloves and with glove work is, I'm a big believer in your glove needs to be an extension of your hand. One of my biggest pet peeves is, and I'll show you a couple gloves, is everybody likes to use the brand new rock and roll Rawlings gloves, whereas I've got my old baby. So surprisingly, it's the same glove. So, but this one is an extension of my hand, and no matter where it goes in it, it's not coming out. Whereas this one, if I don't catch it in the perfect spot, it's going to fall. So it's a big thing that we work on. Having infielders really working on the extension of the hand. The other thing we want with glove work is fielding in what we call the barrel of the glove. Everybody talks about the barrel of the bat, the sweet spot. There's also the barrel of the glove on anything that you can get in front of. So basically, if you look, this, where am I here? This round spot right there, that's your barrel, right? So with quick hand work, and if you get it in the barrel, that's your top hand will follow, quick release. Real good drill with that is just rolling it to you on your knees. You're using bare hand and you're using quick hands to get it out. That you can progress that to on your knees again, rolling it to you with a flat glove. Then you could stand up, rolling with the flat glove, ground balls with the flat glove, moving it on to your regular glove. Everything that can make you as quick as possible. Like Vic said, the more you can do, the more touches you can do, and challenge yourself to get that ball out of your glove as quickly as possible. So quick feet, quick hands, it all works together.
Yeah, and in that glove, when it gets into the web, that's where you get into trouble, right? When you come to gripping it and trying to rush a throw, it's when that ball ends up in the at the top or in the web of your glove as well.
That's where the throwing errors come from. You're right.
Yeah. So we'll move on to our next topic, which is throws. So we're going to start with throws from the outfield. So Victoria, can you talk about proper throwing mechanics and give us the components behind making a good throw?
Yeah. So just a couple basics that I think are super important are just first and foremost, the ball always starts in the center of your body. As we field it, we focus on bringing it to our center, and in this center position, we're athletic, we're balanced, and everything is equal. And so as we explain it, we want everything to be equal and opposite. That's the way our body works the most efficiently. Grip is super important, especially as outfielders when we're making long throws, when we want the ball to sail straight and bounce in a straight line. So what I talk about is you have the C of the ball, and we want to put our W across the C. So that's a good little check. Obviously, you're not going to get it every time, but when you do, things go well. In terms of our arms, we want them to be equal and opposite. I think a lot of people will either have a really long glove arm and then their arm stays short, or just we want our body to flow, and it flows athletically when our glove arm and our throwing arm are working together in sync. A really common thing I see with kids is I was taught like spider on the wall and having this hand work outward. And that actually puts a lot of pressure on your throwing arm and throws off your sequencing and your timing and can result in these throwing errors we're talking about. So we always want our fingers on top and our thumb on the bottom, and our arm action will actually put us in that position. We won't intentionally move our arm into that position. So that's something for young throwers that's super important and a tough habit to fix later in life. And then just with outfield, we want our throws to be efficient, so we want everything to be in that line. So the more I can stay on that line as I throw, with my front foot opening a little bit, staying on that front line and following through with everything towards my target, the more efficient I'm going to be and the more in control I'm going to be of my movements, and just reducing that room for error.
So now over to you, Chris. Throws from infielders to first. What are the mechanics for that?
Back to the right left is a big thing we try to work with. So we field the ground ball with the right foot, then left foot we field, and then we right foot, left foot throw. So it's easy to talk about, but much easier to show. But yeah, so it's right left field, right left throw. Also back to the controlled aggression. That'll dictate whether you have time to do that as well. Because if you have more time, you might even want to do a little more shuffle step on your throw. Some other variables: any balls hit to your backhand side, you've got a back leg load where you could just, as you're fielding the ball, you're absorbing it into your back right leg and no step and throwing right away. A lot of different variables as an infielder to get rid of that ball. Sometimes you might have to get rid of it quicker where you don't have time to shuffle or make a step. It's just in and out of your glove as quickly as possible.
Can you talk a bit about like the arc of the arm too? Like for infielders, they tend to, they can either go quickly to the ear and forward, or a more longer arm kind of arc. Can you talk a bit more about that and what you try to teach infielders on that?
Well, I like them to be able to do both. number one, because sometimes if you may not have time to reach back and throw it as hard as you can, and other times you may have to get rid of it really quick. Like Vic mentioned, you want to be careful about moving that back, because that is causing, after you're throwing time and time again, you're going to have some troubles with your shoulders. A lot of them, and I know Raph was mentioning something about it the other day about just getting it here and getting rid of it. That's a lot easier on your shoulder and your elbow. So we do a lot of that just in here and getting rid of it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
One thing I just want to add on that is your arm, the distance that your arm moves and kind of the shape of your arms is going to be relate to the distance of the throw you're requiring to make. So I think what Jonesy is saying about needing to be able to do both, same thing goes for outfield. If I have to make a short little dart throw, I might not have time to do this whole big crow hop and go. I think our game is so quick that the more kind of adaptable your throw is, and knowing what kind of pace or distance you're going to need to you're going to require in that moment is key for being a super versatile defensive player.
And now for infielders, Chris, I know you like to talk about the belt buckle on throws to first. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, this is something that I learned a number of years ago. And as I tell people, there's always a method to my madness. So what I do with infielders is, especially with younger kids, and no one ever gets the answer, but they're slowly starting to get it because people are starting to talk. But so basically I say, what's your target when you're playing catch with somebody? And everyone says the chest or whatever, and yeah, the head. And I always tell them that they should feel shame. But what I teach is I teach the belt buckle. And the reason why I want that to be the target is, in a nutshell, we don't ever want to throw a ball over first baseman's head. We always want that first baseman to be able to make a play. And if our target's going to be the head or the chest, and we miss high, we risk throwing it, over the head of the first baseman where they can't make a play. Whereas, and the example I always give is, I mean, you watch the major leagues and hardly ever do you see a ball sailed over first baseman's head, but you see a lot that are on the ground where they can pick them. So we teach that because we always want to give that first baseman a chance. And we try to tell them, you can make the best play in the world as a shortstop or second baseman diving in a hole and coming up. If you make a bad throw, and the first baseman can't make a play on it, no one remembers that play. So it's so important, and that's why we teach the belt buckle as a target.
Let's talk more about relay throws now. So on tandem relay, coming in from the outfield, in which situations do both middle infielders go out for a double cut, and where does the first baseman go on those? Let's start with you, Chris, on that. Okay.
Yeah, so the tandem or the double cut, but yeah, I guess tandem's the best word for it. We do it on any field that we're playing at with, let's say, in the international game, the fences are 220. So if we're playing on fields that are more than 200 feet, we will do it. If it's 200 foot, we won't even use it. But most fields are deep enough that we use it. So on any ball that's hit past the outfielders, both our infielders, unless it's down the first baseline, both our middle infielders are going out to use it. So basically, so if a ball's hitting the left center gap, our shortstop goes out to normal cut distance, and our second baseman will follow in behind them, about 10 feet behind them. And if it's a good throw, the second baseman reads it, they drop down on the ground, and then the shortstop makes the throw. If it's over the head and the shortstop has to jump for it, the shortstop doesn't jump for it because it will run right into the second baseman's glove. Or if it's a short hop, the shortstop leaves it and it skips up to the second baseman. At that time, what the first baseman is doing on that play is, as the runner passes first and goes towards second, the first baseman goes in behind them just to back up so that runner can't just go anywhere at second base. The big thing that this does for you, and it's another one of my lines, our sport's not always applesauce and candy floss. It's not always easy. It's not always perfect. So what we don't want is, we don't want that throw to the shortstop. If we don't have any backup, it could short hop them, skip away. We're giving up 3 bases. So it really does give us that protection on a bad throw from the outfielder.
And Victoria, as an outfielder, when a ball gets by you and you go to the fence and you pick it up and you turn around and look at that cut, where are you throwing? Like, are you throwing for the head of the first, the first cut, or just trying to make a strong throw regardless of where it goes, as long as it's hitting that cut?
Well, I think the beauty of the tandem cut is that the throw doesn't have to be perfect because you've got two people there. So I actually will pick up the ball, and as I'm throwing, lock eyes with my target. So I'm shooting for, I don't know if I'll say belt buckle, but I'm definitely shooting for chest-ish belt buckle. Because if I overthrow it, it's actually okay because there's the person in behind. But more important for outfielders is knowing where you're going before you do it, because I know where they should be and I'm throwing to where they should be. And we've done enough times where all goes well, but it's really about getting the ball out of your hand as quickly as possible. And it doesn't have to be perfect with the tandem cut, which I think is great.
It also differs, you know, if there's a runner on first, you might be lining up for home as opposed to nobody on base, then you're trying to line up for third as well. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next topic here. So slow rollers and high choppers. So we'll start with you on this, Chris. What are some of the key components of fielding a slow roller?
The key to that is staying low. What I teach is, and we teach, is fielding the ball inside your glove foot. So you want to, and you're going to field that slow roller with two hands. So you really want, and that by fielding with two hands, it gets you really low because you want to get it in and out of your glove as quickly as possible. So by having your throwing hand in with the glove hand, it allows you to get your head down low, and as you're fielding it off your glove foot, you're getting it to your ear as quickly as possible, and you're stepping with your throwing foot and releasing the ball. Things you got to be careful about there too is as you're charging that and making that throw to first, because your momentum is carrying you that way, your ball's going to tail. So you have to sort of compensate for that as well. But the key to a slow roller is getting that glove, getting your glove down and your throwing hand down, and really getting low, because that just allows you to get rid of it that much quicker.
And which leg do you push off of? Obviously, it's always the throwing hand leg that you're trying to get off.
Yeah, you want to field it on your glove leg, field the ball on your glove leg, step with your throwing leg, because what that does too, it allows you to open up your hips and your shoulders towards first base, so you're not throwing across your body, you're really opening up.
Yeah. And is it different for high choppers?
A high chopper, because if you were to field a high chopper inside your foot, you probably trip over your glove and fall all over the place. So with a high chopper, you want to, two things. Number one, you want to read the hop, hopefully, where you either get it before it hits the ground, right as it hits the ground, or it's right up in your body. So really with a high chop, you're going to field it outside of your foot as you're attacking.
And Victoria, can you explain how important it is for outfielders to properly judge bounces when you're charging in on one? And how do you decide between being aggressive or keeping the ball in front?
Yeah, so the situation is going to dictate a lot of how we approach the ball. So if the game-winning run is on second, I have to be really aggressive, and I might not get to pick the hop that I want, because the most important element of that is speed and getting rid of it as quickly as possible. In other situations when I may have a little bit more time, I think understanding what the bounces and what the significance of the bounces are. We've all fielded a ball in that middle hop, and it's super uncomfortable and it gets a little defensive. So I think in terms of having that controlled aggression, when I'm able to go pick the short hop, or able to hopefully get my glove actually turned upside down and able to field a high hop, especially when we're playing on those bouncy fields, I'm able to transfer the ball a lot more quickly. But ultimately, just the most important thing to me is making sure that my feet are in sync with my arms. So Coach Jones will call it traveling, and we'll laugh when somebody holds the ball for too long and they're taking too many steps. So my goal is foot, glove, and then I'm getting into my crow hop and getting rid of it. Because anytime I'm holding the ball, the runner's taking quite a few steps. So eliminating any of those in-between steps is super important. And judging the bounces will help me have the most efficient footwork.
Yep. Now, before we get into our last topic, just want to send a reminder out to everybody to put your questions into the questions box if you have anything on defense to ask Chris Jones or Vic. And, you know, any question at all, actually. I mean, they're happy to answer anything about their careers. If it's an experience that they went through, whether it's throwing out a runner or key hit or anything like that, feel free to put them in the questions box, and we'll get into that in a couple of minutes here. So we'll end with steal coverage, Chris. So with the runner on first, talk about the coverage at second base on a steal attempt.
Yeah, the one thing is, I mean, on the national level, we, depending on the hitter, will dictate who takes the bag. I know it's a lot of the younger ages, at least in the girls game, it seems the shortstop takes everything. To each their own on that. If that's the way the coaches want, that's fine. The biggest thing on that, though, that I'm finding is a lot of people don't understand that when the runner is stealing, you need to get over there. I mean, I see it in the international level. I see it all over that too many people get there late. And the one thing is, I mean, if the hit and run works and they hit it where you were, tip your cap. And the amount of times that they're going to hit a ball where you vacate to the amount of times you're going to be late is going to hurt you defensively. So I know I asked a bunch of girls that I worked with who are, some few were on the junior national team as well, and I would ask them, when do you go over for coverage at second? And they said, well, when it gets to the catcher or when it's halfway to the catcher. And I said, no, you got to go. Once you know that runner's stealing, you have to be there. So that's the biggest thing is the communication, the middles to know when to get there. I mean, the big thing is get to the front corner of the bag, and on a good throw, it's a good thing to, if it's going to be a good throw as the ball's traveling, you can straddle to the back, receive the throw. Don't go get the ball, let the ball come to you, receive it, and make the tag. Tag with one hand. You don't want to have two, because as you get older, that's when the steel cleats come in and you could have some issues. But the big thing there is don't go get the ball on the throw. Straddle on a good throw, and on a bad throw, ball first. Always remember ball first.
Yeah. And Victoria, from an outfielder's perspective, what's your responsibility on a steal?
Like on most plays, our role is to back up. And I think just so often you want to get close and you want to kind of, when we hear backup, we go charge and go get in line. But just making sure that you have the appropriate distance, because there have been horror stories where it goes over the outfielder too. So just making sure that you're in line, but also at an appropriate distance based on the arm strength of whoever's throwing the ball.
And now, what about steal coverage at third base, Chris? Is the shortstop always the one taking that on a feint bunt, or does it depend on which side the batter is hitting from?
Yeah, it depends on who the batter is. I mean, if you're dealing with a 3 or a 4 hitter that you're not expecting to bunt, then odds are you'll communicate with the third baseman and say, listen, you stay back. Unless you see that ball go down, then you can come. But otherwise, I need you to stay back. That allows, as a shortstop, to lean more up the middle. The other thing, I mean, you've got to know, hopefully you know the team you're playing. You know if they use that play as a tendency to do it. Those will dictate on whether, as a shortstop, you need to take that bag, because it is a tough play, especially as a shortstop. You're running, your eyes are bouncing, and receiving the throw at the same time. It can be a tougher play. So that's why if you're facing a team that does it a lot, you have to really communicate with your third baseman.
All right, so we'll get into questions from the audience now. We'll start with a fun one for you, Chris. Besides coaching and playing softball, what do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, other than hang out with my 3 kids that are home now, I love to golf. I'm not very good at it, even though I might think I am. So I love to golf.
This one for Victoria. What's the difference of coaching in the Northeast compared to coaching elsewhere, like in the West and South? And what is the difference of the type of player coming out of the Northeast compared to West South?
Yeah, I don't know if it's as much regionally in terms of the differences. I think each individual school is kind of going to have their own kind of personality in terms of who it attracts. So when I was coaching at UMass, it was a very high academic school, and people really valued their education, and that came first. And that was it was a lot of people's priorities, and that wasn't always the same at other schools that I had worked at. So I think depending on what each school values and kind of their mission are going to speak a little bit more to that. In terms of, I decided to move to Florida to train full time because I wanted the ability to be able to be outside almost 365 days a year. So I think coaching is very different. I had to be a lot more creative in terms of indoor drills, especially with outfielders, hitting drills in cages, just keeping it fresh. I think schools in the South can definitely have an advantage that way, but also those things get taken for granted sometimes when you don't have those times where it's taken away. So there are definitely pros to both.
So for you, Chris, what advice would you give to the 15-year-old version of yourself?
Probably for me, if I would have, yeah, that's a really good question. Get in better shape, I would say. Work out, be strong. I mean, I get to see these female athletes on the women's team, and man, they're all beasts. They're so strong and so powerful. Whereas at 15, we just played. So I would say get in much better shape.
And I think that's changed a lot over the last couple of decades too, right? Like I think, kids are getting, into training, younger and younger, it seems. So this one's for Victoria. In your opinion, where has the national team made the biggest strides during your time with the program?
Off the field, our culture has really just created just an awesome environment. Yeah, I could sit here and talk for hours on that. And it's come a long way, both just of the maturity of our team and understanding of what our goals are and what we're doing. But in terms of softball specific, I think our hitting has gotten a lot better. I think there were a lot of times where we were just scraping by with one-run ball games, and it was just playing really good defense, putting a really great pitching performance together, and then just hoping to claw for that one run. And although the game has changed a little bit in terms of some of the arms in the circle, I think that our team has a little bit more firepower, and that's pretty exciting.
Okay, so who is the cut for home from a throw from the outfield? Can you maybe field that one, Chris? Whose responsibility is that?
Well, depending on where the where the ball's hit. So, and this also depends. I mean, I know there's been a lot of talk recently about first baseman being able to cover something into left center, but that's based on 200-foot fences, right? So for us at the 220, our outfielders are deep enough. So anything to the left of our shortstop. So if the shortstop or to the right of our shortstop, anything between short and third, our third baseman takes the cut. Otherwise, first baseman takes the cut. Yeah. And our pitcher backs up.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea because you want your third baseman to make plays at third. Because the first baseman is kind of out of the play anyway. You're giving that base away on a hit.
Yeah, it gets a little different when you're starting to deal with some of the college parks that have 190 fences down the line and 200. The outfielders are so shallow, but in the women's game with the 220 fences, they're quite a bit deeper.
Yeah. I'll send this over to Victoria, and if she can't answer, maybe it'll go to Chris. Have you seen more defensive shifts of late, particularly with teams that you have a history of batter tendencies?
Yeah, I would say I actually had, I think it was last year, I had this six person infield. It might have been a year or 2 years ago, so I hadn't seen that in quite a while. Or the outfielder coming in. But I think a lot of it is based on the pitcher and their strengths. So I've seen some pretty wild ones. I've also seen some pretty wild ones get beat. So I think just understanding your own strengths of your pitching staff, and then as a hitter, just really trying not to just play your game, and they can move the defenders where they want. But I think that's when you see people get really outside themselves, is when they try to hit to exploit the shift versus just doing what they do best.
And as a hitter, does your eyes light up when you see that? Do you look for the spot that you want to put it whenever that comes?
Yeah, well, when I saw the other infielder come in, I was like, oh, they think I'm a slapper only. Well, I'm not a slapper only, so here we go. But I think also if you're going into a crazy shift, you're showing some of your cards. So I know that if there is a shift happening, they're going to pitch me into that shift. And so it's basically who better can use the information. So when they brought that other infielder in and they had no right fielder, I knew I wasn't going to get any pitches inside, so I could really set my sights on something away. And then it's just whose stuff is going to beat who. So I think there are definitely pros and cons to doing it.
Yeah. And now, Chris, have you seen other teams, shift on defense playing against us? I know you don't want to show your cards for our own team, but have you seen other countries that kind of do that against us?
Yeah, I've seen it to a slight, a slight extreme. Not anything too crazy, but if I'm coaching and when I'm at first base, that's stuff that I'm trying to look for to see if they are doing anything. But I haven't seen anything too drastic.
Okay, flip over to Victoria on this one. Can you talk a little more about preparation for defense and scenarios? Do you have a personal dialogue on defense you go through to make sure you make the best play?
Yeah, so pre-pitch, pre-game, we'll have a scout, and I'll be in constant communication with Coach Jones as one of the leaders of the outfield. And so we'll have plans with our catchers based on how we're pitching certain hitters. So we'll have an initial plan, and then ultimately things change. Different pitchers go in, spots are hit, spots are missed. It's not always easy. So we're constantly communicating on the fly, pre-pitch, in the middle of when the ball's hit. I mean, our outfield is really great at communicating, and we're constantly telling each other fence, telling each other where they need to throw the ball, who they're throwing it to, and all of those things. So the communication is in between innings. It's pre-pitch, it's post-pitch, and it's actually when the ball is being hit. So it's pretty constant.
Yeah. I'll ask this one to Chris. I'm not sure about this question myself, but maybe you can answer. How would you switch sides on a drop step?
In the infield? Yeah, I mean, I'm not I know we have a couple infielders that don't mind the drop step, but switching sides on it, I mean, you're going to be in your ready position as soon as that contact. So if it's, depending on how that ball is hit, if it's to your right shoulder, to your left shoulder, it'll dictate which way your drop step is going to be. Any hard hit ground ball, you're just going to be reacting and going to it. So really the only time, I mean, the other problem with the drop step on a ground ball is you don't want infielders to start using that as a first instinct all the time, because on slow rollers, the last thing you want to do is start with a drop step. So dictating on where that ball will be hit, similar to a pop fly over your shoulder as an infielder, will dictate whether you go to the right or to the left. It's pretty easy to open up either way.
Okay. Victoria, what would you say to younger players that don't have an interest in playing the outfield?
I feel yeah, I've been there. I think there was a time where I didn't really appreciate it. I was a left-handed shortstop, and they told me to go to the outfield, and I was like, what do you mean? I'm a left-handed shortstop. That's fine. And so I think just finding where your strengths are as a softball player and really finding a way to embrace those in any position, because ultimately the coach is going to do what's best for the team, and just finding a way to make it yours. I think outfield's a fun way we laugh a lot. We love to joke. We have our personality, and we try to have a lot of fun. And so I think the more you can just be yourself and incorporate your personality and your strengths into your position is where you're going to find more joy.
And now for Chris, how would you defend a slapper?
Well, how I would defend a slapper, I would, as a shortstop, basically most slappers want to hit to the 5-6 hole. So as a shortstop, I would pretty much play the baseline, and they're going to hit it to me, and I'm going to increase my aggression level depending on how hard that ball's hit. And yeah, so I would always play, when I played a slapper, I would play even with the baseline.
So I'll ask this to Chris as well. When the second baseman is covering first base on a bunt, what foot should be on the bag?
On that one, basically your left foot. So as you're going over to get there, you want your left foot, so then your shoulders are square to the throw. It also, the left foot is quicker to get to because your right foot takes you another step to get there, and then you're not going to be square to that throw. So left foot, get square, read the throw, and on a bad throw, if you're square to the throw, you can react much easier if you've got to go to your right or to your left. Whereas if you went to your other foot, your right foot, it limits that.
Okay, and then this one for Victoria. How much communication from infield and outfield is there at the higher levels before the pitch? So like, do you guys give behind the back signals or anything like that?
Sometimes, not always. I think it's really dependent on the pitcher and knowing the plan. But there's a lot of communication in terms of positioning. As an outfielder, I love to know where the pitch is, but more important than that, I need to know where the other outfielders are. So there's a lot of, hey, I'm over this way, hey, I'm over this way, hey, I'm in, hey, I'm deep. But in terms of every pitch, it's a risk if the other team knows that we're doing it. It's not a risk that we're willing to take to relay that information to the outfielders if the hitter can then do some damage with it, because we can't always defend a home run. So I think if there's an opportunity to do it, I love to have it, but there's so much scouting and that kind of stuff at our level that it's not always easy. But when I'm playing center, I love to know where the pitch is, and that helps a lot with positioning.
And now for Chris, so on a rundown, do you follow your throw or peel off?
I always teach follow your throw.
Yeah. So
and everybody, you want everyone to follow to play that routine, so then there's not some people peeling off and some follow it. So yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll end on this question so each of you can give your response. Who's your role model in the game? Start with you, Chris.
My role model is my dad. He always played fastball in Oshawa growing up, so I was always around the park. So he was the one as a player that when I played who would come to the park and hit me ground balls, whether I was 10 or towards the end of my career when I was in my mid-30s. He would always hit me ground balls. So he's definitely biggest influence in this sport for me. Great.
And then for you, Victoria?
I've had some really awesome coaches that have helped shape the player that I am today. But ultimately, the people that have had the biggest impact on me are my teammates, especially those that I've been on this journey with since 2009. So Joey Lai, Jenna Kyra, Kaylee Rafter, Jen Salling, Danielle, now Lauren Bay, just people that have done what I want to do, go to the Olympics, help lead their team, be great softball players, great people. So I'm grateful for those people.
Great. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and talk about defense. Really appreciate both of you being with us. Best of luck to both of you guys as you head towards Tokyo next summer, and keep training hard for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That will conclude today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today. If you have any comments or suggestions for our speaker series webinars, feel free to send them to Gilles LeBlanc or Angela Ballantyne at Softball Canada. The next Rawlings Canada speaker series webinar will be co-organized by Softball Ontario and Softball Canada on the topic of season planning and using the athlete development matrix. The session will feature Dave Petkow and Adam Walker at 7 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, June 4th. Please make sure you register at softball.ca. Cela conclut notre webinaire aujourd'hui. Merci beaucoup d'avoir participé. Si vous avez des commentaires ou des suggestions pour ces webinaires, veuillez les envoyer à Gilles Leblanc ou Angela Ballantyne à Softball Canada. Le prochain webinaire de Rawlings Canada sera organisé entre Softball Ontario et Softball Canada sur le sujet de la planification de saison et utiliser la matrice de développement des athlètes. La session sera présentée par Dave Petkow et Adam Walker à 19h jeudi le 4 juin. Assurez-vous de vous inscrire à softball.ca.